when they went to the queen to tell her her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of the Peasants Perspective. I'm so glad to have you guys here today. It is a day that we don't usually go live. It is Saturday. Yes, I am still traveling in the hotel. And yes, that's Sleeping Beauty back there behind me over my shoulder. Pony Boy, good morning. Yes, Saturday edition. Also known as I didn't get enough hours of streaming in. I did get enough chats, didn't read enough ads, so I got to make up some time today. So we are going to do a full show. And I am pretty excited about it because there is a lot of stuff going on out in the world today. In fact, I almost wish this was like a regular week show because then I could assume that our regular listeners will have kept up on all this stuff because it was quite an incredible day from Thanksgiving to yesterday to today. It's been pretty incredible. So I kind of wanted to recap a couple things. I feel like, there's been multiple times that I felt this. So it's not the first time I've said, I feel like there's a tone change, but there was a tone change. It kind of made all the other tone changes look bad. It was really significant. So yet on the 27th, so we did read this. It was Trump's message about Thanksgiving. Right now, this has become like a nonstop talking point in social media and on the news for the last couple days. And because it is the holidays, I have found that a lot of people have not heard this. In fact, pretty much everybody that I spent the Thanksgiving weekend with, I'm the one who read this to them. Go figure, right? Of course, me bringing up politics on Thanksgiving. Happy very Thanksgiving. Salutation to all our great American citizens and patriots who've been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at, along with other certain foolish countries throughout the world for being, quote, politically correct and just plain stupid when it comes to immigration. What I feel like, this has been pinned on the rapid response page, and this was actually posted on X, not just on Truth, but also posted on X, which Donald Trump rarely himself posts on X. Good morning, Carlitos. Grand rising to you and everyone else. Awesome. Yeah, I know, Peter Brown. Surprised you're here. Maybe I should stream on Saturdays so you can be here with us. So, but this right here is acknowledging that political correctness has prevented good people from speaking up about the immigration woes and stuff like that. If you want to critique the welfare system, then they'll say, "Oh, what are you prejudicial against welfare queens?" If you want to critique immigration, they're like, "What do you think? You're too good. And you can't share with other people." It's like they throw your virtue back in your face. This idea of political correctness, which then moves on to become woke. It's expressed in policy through things like affirmative action and then rebranded as DEI, right? Over and over again. So Trump, he's always spoken clearly about this, but the younger generation, again, the 40 and under generation, which most of our listeners, there are quite a few of you that are under 40, but I would say this is for the most part a Gen X/Boomer podcast. Just from my observations based on who I know listens, but there's a kind of a difficulty in acknowledging what is happening to the younger generations. The number one influencer in the country for youth, for the key demographic, is Nick Fuentes. Now, some of you guys don't know who Nick Fuentes is, but he's just a Christian American nationalist who is not afraid to say racist things. Let's put it that way. The United States foreign population stands at 53 million people. And then he puts census in here. This was a big wake-up call. These numbers have been misstated over and over. I've heard people say 5 million. I've heard people say 20 million. I've heard people say 15 million. I've heard 40 million. But apparently the United States is aware of at least 53 million people per census data that are a foreign population, which you need to understand. That's like, there's 350 million people in the United States. So this is like a seventh of the population. It's not a small number. Basically what this means is there's a good chance every single one of you know foreign born people who live here. And because we know how many of them are illegals, there's a good chance you know some illegals that are here that you probably think are legal, most of which are on welfare from failed nations, from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. They and their children are supported through massive payments from patriotic American citizens who, because of their beautiful hearts, do not want to openly complain. Here's that tying in politically correct with openly complaining. If you say anything that goes against the narrative or goes against compassion or goes against whatever virtue they're weaponizing against us, they say that you're not being politically correct. You're not being woke. You're being bigoted, racist, prejudicial, homophobic, xenophobic, transphobic, you name it, or cause trouble in any way, shape, or form. They put up with what has happened in our country, but it's eating them alive to do so. A migrant earning $30,000 with a green card will get roughly $50,000 in yearly benefits for their family. The real migrant population is much higher. The refugee burden is leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Failed schools, high crimes, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, housing shortages, and large deficits. As an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia. Now he's bringing up Somalia in this. Keep this in mind. We're going to talk about this. There's military engagement happening in Somalia, and it's not small engagement, and nobody is talking about it. Are completely taking over a once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they will be left alone. This is speaking to inner city populations, urban America, legacy Americans whose grandparents moved to the cities for those great factory jobs, for those great high-rise office jobs, and they're born in the city. That's their land. They're peasants of the urban environment. Just like I consider myself a peasant of the country or of suburbia, these are urban peasants, right? And they grew up in a time where a lot of these people felt like they could walk around on the streets. If you grew up in the 90s in New York, it was a pretty safe place compared to where it was in the 70s and 80s, right? Because of the Giuliani effect. You know, there's been good times in America. Obviously, you'll have crime-ridden neighborhoods here and there, and that's always been frustrating for people. But more and more, the last couple decades, and really the last 4 years under Biden, some of these neighborhoods have gotten out of control. I'm not covering anything that's really happening in Dearborn, Michigan right now, but it's kind of exploding over there a little bit. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both, while the worst congressman woman in our country, Ilhan Omar, always wrapped in her swaddling hijab and who probably came to the USA illegally, in that you are not allowed to marry your brother, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, and how badly she is treated, when her place of origin is a decadent, backward, and crime-ridden nation, which is essentially not even a country for lack of government, military, police, schools, etc. Even as we have progressed technologically, immigration policy has eroded those gains and living conditions for many. And this is going to be a total theme going forward, is the explanation by our politicians about how immigration policy has eroded the social safety net that we all believed in and took advantage of, right? And it's legion. All the programs that were designed for United States citizens whose parents had paid into the system and then they would pay it forward are being shortchanged by introducing new people into the system that have never paid in. And so the burden, the cost of that is borne by future generations, and it's borne by our pocketbook through inflation to pay for it. I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's Autopen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country, end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is the public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. These goals will be pursued with the aim of achieving a major reduction in illegal and disruptive populations, including those admitted through unauthorized and illegal Autopen approval. Only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all, except those that hate, steal, murder, and destroy everything that America stands for. You won't be here for long. Now, that was one of the most politically altering tweets or X posts or truths that I think Trump has ever posted. And unfortunately, I made a little mistake in the fact that I didn't get to the other posts I wanted to read. I went ahead and closed that. So let me put that back up, because there's more that happened here. I want to follow his page. Okay, so that was said, which again, another big deal. So then yesterday, after we put the show out, so that was our Thanksgiving, which was, imagine all the dinner tables that were talking about, immigration and stuff like that. So then yesterday, after we had our show, Trump put this out: any document signed by Sleepy Joe Biden with the Autopen, and this is a stunning percentage, which was approximately 92% of them, is hereby terminated and of no further force of effect. This is everything. Executive orders, all of his actions done by the Autopen. Trump's just saying, done, over, no force. The Autopen is not allowed to be used if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States. States, which I find it interesting the way he separated this, the United States. There's something to that. The radical left lunatics circling Biden around the beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office took the presidency away from him. I am hereby canceling all executive orders and everything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden, because the people who operated the Autopen did so illegally. Joe Biden was not involved in the Autopen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What? This is nullifying an entire American presidency, which, I mean, as someone who always believed that the Biden regime was illegitimate, this doesn't surprise me and I'm happy about it. But at the same time, this is like, some of these policies were in place for 4 years. This is the way we operated. So for him just to completely rebut it and just say it's over is like, wow. And then where it gets wild and crazy here is this part. Joe Biden was not involved in the Autopen process. So the House did investigations. The Department of Justice did investigations. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out like military intelligence did investigations. And so he's saying he wasn't involved in the Autopen process. And if he says he was, so he comes out and says, oh, I authorized everything, I did it. Trump is saying he will be brought up on charges of perjury. We know you were not involved. If you try to backtrack and say you were, you'll be brought up on charges for perjury. At least he's getting a heads up, unlike what Donald Trump got, right? Again, thank you for your attention to this matter. Wow. So again, another shockwave, because then the debate becomes, not only is Trump a bigot and a xenophobe and whatever else, but then it's like, well, now we've got, and I closed that tab again, darn it. Now we've got the, basically nullifying everything. We've already heard the House say we want to nullify the pardons. The executive branch has declared the pardons null and void. So you know how they're going to test it? Breaking news. And again, sources are, insider sources. So who knows what that means? But some of these people have broken news that turned out to be true. So got to look at it. Imminent indictments for all of the January 6th committee. I heard Fauci floated in there. Basically, a lot of these pardons, they're going to go ahead and charge them with crimes, the crimes that they were allegedly pardoned for, and then let the courts decide if they're going to honor that pardon or not. I am very curious how this goes, because myself, a recipient of a presidential pardon, anytime I hear people talk about nullifying the pardon or throwing us back in jail, I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. But I know my pardon was signed on national TV by the president speaking to the world. So you can't say that he didn't put his intention into it and sign it with his own pen. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at this. Let's talk about Somalia. I mentioned this yesterday, and this is another one of those things where it's like, woo, better pay attention here. Not only are we deporting a bunch of Somalis back to Somalia, but there's also major action happening in Somalia. So major operation underway in Somalia. Confirmed. Reports indicate that American Special Forces have launched, this is from Jim Ferguson, by the way, have launched a major ground assault against Islamic State Somalia Province, ISSP, in the Balade Valley of Puntland. Those are awesome names. What we know so far, intense fighting across the Khao Miskad mountain range, approximately 100 U.S. special operators deployed deep into Puntland, direct strikes on ISSP mountain strongholds, heavy engagement reported between U.S. forces and ISIS Somalia fighters. This is not a drone strike or advisory role. This is direct U.S. ground combat deep inside of ISIS's most entrenched African hideouts. The operational directive appears clear. Break ISSP's foothold in Puntland and dismantle their mountain sanctuary. A development to watch closely, because the U.S. is committing this level of force, is something significant is unfolding in the Horn of Africa. So when we come back and we look at his updated post, something is happening big in the Horn of Africa. The U.S. Special Forces are fighting on the ground in Puntland, not advising, not supporting, but engaging ISIS in Somalia directly. And this isn't a routine counterterrorism operation. This is strategic. The Kalmiskad Mountains have been one of ISIS's strongest strongholds to crack. For America to send operators deep into that terrain tells you everything. There was intelligence, there was urgency, and there was no time to wait. The question now is, what triggered this deployment? What threat was serious enough to send elite forces into one of Africa's most dangerous valleys? The story is far from over. I'm going to make a prediction as to what I think it is that they're chasing. They're chasing the money coming out of Minnesota that was going to Al-Shabaab and into that ISIS network. That's what I believe is happening. I believe they're using this opportunity to basically go ahead and not just recover the money. Who cares about recovering the money? But to go and break that link that is drawing and sucking from America. I'm trying to get a little more light on myself here. Okay, so that's, again, did you know we were in Somalia? I didn't know we were in Somalia. Actually, I did. I'd mentioned it. This is an older video, but it's important for us to understand because, again, this man was a presidential candidate. He was a Secretary of State. He's very influential in the world of Democrat politics. And who is this person, you ask? This is John Kerry, who ended up being our climate czar under Joe Biden, aka ultimate grifter. Okay. And he is here on this panel, Impact Meetings, World Economic Forum in 2024, talking about the First Amendment. A couple things to pay attention as you listen to this. Listen to this. He's talking about the First Amendment, and he's talking about doing away with it because it's hard to create a cohesive narrative. Now, we understand the importance of cohesive narratives. Totally. Makes perfect sense. The problem is when someone's telling you the narrative rather than the narrative developing correctly from each individual's observed reality, which is what our founding fathers wanted to enshrine by making sure we had freedom of speech. We wanted to make sure the king couldn't cast a spell by telling everybody not to say that the emperor had no clothes on, right? When you're not allowed to say it, then you stop thinking it, and pretty soon your emperor is naked. And that's basically where we're at.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact have kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media.
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. And to me, that is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States?
Will we break the fever of free speech? Now, there's a phrase that I like to repeat in my mind anytime that I hear people saying things that I just don't agree with, or I have a fundamental shock factor, which I have a fundamental shock factor when you're criticizing free speech. He's not wrong. everybody's rational in their own minds. Okay. Now, the things that he wants democracy to move faster on are most likely things like climate change or the control grid or whatever. And I got news for you. We don't really live in a democracy, right? We live in a republic. And if a republic has someone at the head of it like Donald Trump, it can move at lightning speed. If it has a patsy at the head of it like Biden, it can move at lightning speed. But yes, a genuine democracy is going to move slow until it moves all at once. That's kind of how that works. But he's talking about not being able to control the ground game because false news pops up. Problem is, in his mind, the false news is things like climate change isn't real or mass migration is a problem. Oh, that's false news. And they can't control the ground. So he's expressing how difficult it is to control people when people are allowed to speak freely. One, because A, they can tell the truth. They might view that truth as something they don't want shared, or B, people can in fact share false lies and narratives. This is why I say everybody's rational in their own minds. On their side, they have an agenda, and people on the other side are trying to break it apart and so just, speak ill of it. And then on our side, the America side, or the liberty-loving classical liberals, classical as in we believe in individualism, not liberal left communism. So this is John Harold, and he's talking about what's happening in the MAGA sphere and in the online sphere as far as fake accounts sowing division. And again, what John Kerry is seeing in the inability to control the narrative, right? Once you recognize, hey, we don't have the ability, the 4 or 5 news channels that we used to be able to use in order to control the narrative, only like a small percentage, it actually is a pretty small percentage of the population actually watches the news. The rest of them get it from social media, and they get in their information through the zeitgeist. What's the zeitgeist? It's just the spirit of the air around us, right? When there's social unrest, the zeitgeist is that things aren't right. When things are abundant and wages are good, the zeitgeist is things are good, politicians are doing fine, turn a blind eye to corruption, just don't shake the boat kind of thing. The zeitgeist is just the general attitude, the societal consensus. Okay, when people get their information from the zeitgeist, this is why when, for example, ESPN analysts or basketball coaches or celebrity endorsements become so important, is because they're the ones who influence the zeitgeist. Most people don't watch the news, but there's millions of people every day that listen to Taylor Swift. So then when Taylor Swift has a headline or an Instagram post that says, I endorse Kamala Harris, then that becomes part of the zeitgeist. Okay. So this is John Harold talking about how our zeitgeist, the America zeitgeist, is being fractured and split by foreign operators. And Pray the Rosary Daily, yes, Saturday edition, if I didn't already mention you there.
Trump has been the #1 target of all of the deep state shenanigans since he came down the escalator. All the Russiagate stuff, all the impeachment stuff, the COVID stuff, the stolen election stuff. They tried to politically persecute him. They tried to assassinate him. He's been the #1 target, right? But the way these people present Trump when they tell him what he needs to do, it's like, oh, this guy's the #1 enemy, but he has no idea what he's doing. Like, how would he be the #1 enemy of these people if he had no idea what he was doing? Trump was that easily controlled and manipulated where he would just hire anybody that works against him and all these things. He wouldn't be such a threat to them. So what are these people doing when they're trying to, in my opinion, some of these comments, they're an attempt to delegitimize Trump. And you know what? That's what narrative warfare is. Rich Higgins wrote about this in his memo. And I wrote about this in my series. Narrative warfare, regular warfare, is all about delegitimizing somebody. And you know how you do that? You do that by making him seem stupid and incompetent. And so why are these people that everybody looks to as heroes of the movement assisting our enemies by making Trump seem incompetent?
Why are they assisting our enemies? I got a phone call from someone yesterday who kind of expressed a similar sentiment. Trump surrounded himself by bad people and things aren't moving fast enough. Yeah, I get it. I understand. I want things to move faster too. There's a lot of me that worries that the obstruction and the right's desire to, quote, play by the rules makes things go slow. Playing by the rules is how you end up with Comey and Letitia James getting their cases dismissed for kind of no good reason. Now, I don't know that I've ever, maybe I have once or twice. I don't know if I've ever really played like a Nick Fuentes clip here on the show, but there's a couple things. So he's talking about the narrative warfare, the divide, split the divide. By Elon Musk making it so on X that you can see the country of origin, that was revelatory. There were major MAGA accounts that were based out of Nigeria, Asia, Eastern Europe, and Israel, and even Saudi Arabia, major MAGA accounts that were causing division. These were accounts that back in the day endorsed Ron DeSantis, right? Who's paying for them? Is it organic? Is it foreign or anything like that? This is a big deal. Now, we've played a couple clips about what's her name? Nicole Welch. And she is kind of like the female equivalent of Nick Fuentes on the left. She's like fascistically woke, and Nick Fuentes is like fascistically nationalist, right? So you've got kind of this divide. On CNN, the Abby Phillips show, she had a panel on, and they were talking about this concept of how, they've had Nick Fuentes, or, they support Nick Fuentes, but she's had people on her show. Anyways, let's watch the clip. It's fascinating. Abby got into the mumble tank here just a little bit, because what this other guest, and I can't remember her name, she used to be the spokesperson for Trump's immigration in the first term, but she was like, listen, you've had people on your show that have called me and my husband Nazis. How is that different than having Nick Fuentes on if you're on the right, Tucker Carlson? Oh, you guys are probably going to want to have the screen share. There you go.
Speak freely. It's about whether someone like Tucker Carlson, who is a very powerful force in the conservative movement.
You host people on your show all the time who call my husband and myself a Nazi. So how is that any different from Tucker Carlson going on Nick Fuentes having Nick Fuentes on his show? It's not different.
He's actually
anti-Semitic. He's anti-Semite.
A Hitler admirer. Nick Fuentes is actually a Hitler admirer.
But he literally is not a good
That is a different
thing. Excuse me, you have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar
to do with it? What does she have to do with it? She has nothing to do with it. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal who has an opinion who is not a neo-Nazi. They are not
a hateful opinion.
The same.
How do you want? Excuse me. Just let's go back to this point one more time.
But
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not the same.
And he didn't push back the same way you didn't push back when someone called someone in my family.
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second.
It's not.
If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Welch's podcast. It's the same.
Okay. I just put the dots together. Thank you, Pray the Rosary Daily. For some reason, I had failed to make the connection between this Katie Miller, the former spokesperson on immigration, and Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff. That makes this clip even more extreme because, yes, on Abby Phillips' show, multiple times they have, in fact, called Stephen Miller Nazi, and in no uncertain terms. And she specifically mentions Welch's show. So let's continue here. Yes, thank you, Pray the Rosary Daily, for putting that together for me. Making that connection.
They are not the same thing.
What I think is
but Katie, but hold on, Katie.
No,
do you believe that Jennifer Welch has a right to say something negative about your husband?
The same way Nick Fuentes has the right to say what he wants to say.
So you think you think that it's okay? Hold on. Do you think it is okay for Jennifer Welch? Is she allowed to say something negative about your husband?
Absolutely, and it's your job as a moderator then to push back.
So that's the first thing.
It's the same way you're asking Tucker Carlson to push back against Nick Fuentes.
But hold on, Nick Fuentes.
Is it not different?
Nick Fuentes is espousing. He's not describing someone else as a Nazi. He is saying, I admire Nazis. You don't think that's a different thing?
Do you believe my husband's a Nazi? You allow someone on your show to say
it. Do you think those things are different or not?
I don't.
By the way, Nick Fuentes has thousands of hours of content, so he has said some of the most radical things. But I have gone and watched a couple things, and again, Nick Fuentes is a different generation than me. He's not my cup of tea, but everything I've heard from him, he's rational in his own mind. It makes sense to him. It's his observed reality. It's his observed world. And he's wicked smart. But what will happen is somebody will call him a fascist or a racist or a Nazi. And then he'll get on his show and he'll be like, oh yeah, you got me. I'm a fascist. I admire Trump. Or I admire look at my Freudian slip. I admire Hitler. He was great. All the great, he'll go off and he'll lean into it. That's what I think he's doing.
I believe it's the same equitable comparison for Nick Fuentes to go on Tucker Carlson's show as you to have people to have on your show.
You are making a comparison of two things that are not in any way the same. I acknowledge and listen, when
it's happened more than once, Abby. But hold on. At one point, it's a common occurrence.
When people say their opinions, I don't endorse them, but I also am not responsible for their opinions.
So doesn't that apply to Tucker Carlson?
That is different from a person themselves describing themselves as a hate monger.
Is Tucker Carlson responsible for Nick Fuentes' opinions?
But hold on a second. I am also not a Republican Party official or a Democrat Party official.
Neither is
and
Tucker
so I'm
Carlson.
asking you about you as a Republican and who you think is the leader of your party, right?
Right
and
now it's President Donald Trump.
And I'm asking your opinion, okay? If you think that J.D. Vance is that person, do you think that he should be sitting at a table and nodding along with Nick Fuentes? Yes or no?
I don't believe J.D. Vance has ever sat and nodded along with Nick Fuentes.
Do you think that Tucker Carlson? Do you think it is okay for J.D. Vance to think it's okay for Tucker Carlson to sit and nod along with?
I think it's okay for Tucker Carlson to have Nick Fuentes on the show the same way you have people on your show who espouse similar views.
Hold on, that's all I asked you, and we can just leave it at that. Because at the end of the day, that is what the Republican Party has to decide. Do they care whether or not someone who has a loud voice in their party is bringing on somebody who is encouraging neo-Nazism?
Wait,
and if you think that is
okay,
wait, if you think that's okay,
let's go back to the murder of Trump.
Okay, got a little crazy there at the end, but that's not a bad question, right? Is it okay to have someone on your show that encourages neo-Nazism? And she's like, you're doing the same thing on the other side. You're nodding along with Nicole Welch. You're nodding along with all these people that are saying the most hateful things. You might want to ascribe some kind of ideology to it, some ideology that you hate. But a wise man once said a couple thousand years ago, by your fruits ye shall know them. It doesn't really matter what you're saying. It's that you're saying it with hate. It's that you're not saying it with intellect. Here's an example of Welch, who they were mentioning, who is really truly the female equivalent of Nick Fuentes on the right.
Trump 2.0 is in an absolute free fall. The man is face planting. He has clear signs of dementia. He has clear signs of losing his motor skills. He's surrounded by a bunch of absolute morons, and the American public does not like it when this man governs. For some reason that we'll have to deal with later, they buy his bullshit when he's campaigning. But as soon as he gets into office, this happened with Trump 1.0, and it's definitely happening a lot faster with Trump 2.0. People can't stand it. They cannot stand what a drama queen this guy is, how tone deaf he is, decorating the Oval, building his ballroom, while people are absolutely losing their jobs and the economy is in a free fall.
First, let's take a look at Donald Trump's net approval rating. It's way down from where it was pre-shutdown, right? Pre-shutdown, his net approval rating was at minus 10 points. Now it's at minus 15 points, the lowest his net approval rating has been during his entire second term in office.
So as you can see, people know that this administration is setting up a blue tsunami. Historically, that's what happens. But I think in this case, the tsunami is going to be so large, it's going to be difficult for them to cheat.
So that is her, as you can see, just basically saying Donald Trump is losing his mind. And then it's funny because Harry Anton puts out that one piece where Trump's underwater. And then the next day is like, Trump's got the highest approval rating within his party they've ever had. Again, Abby Phillips has this other person on a very regular basis. This is, let me put it where I want it. Trump has this person, or Abby Phillips has this person on a very regular basis. This is Jasmine Crockett. Now she's become one of these like designated, designated liars, as Scott Adams calls it. But think about this in terms of what's happened this week, or what's been happening with these targeted assassinations. And I have something to say. Killers need to be killed. right? That's like a common sense thing. If somebody's a murderer, a mass murderer, the best solution is to take them out of the picture. This is like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of stuff. It does make the whole world blind in the end. And maybe at the end of this whole thing, we do all go blind. But this is a representative of the United States.
I am here because this is truly life or death. We have an administration that is not only killing people, but is a dream killer right now. That is not the best of America. We are here because we care. I know so many people are frustrated and don't believe in politicians. But let me tell you that it takes real courage in this moment to stand up. And that is why we stand with and behind your mayor, because she knows what it is to be under attack by this administration. We understand that to be elected nowadays isn't just about service. It literally is life or death if you decide that you want to do what is right. So let me tell you, we are standing with your elected leaders because they are protecting the people from their own federal government that is dishing out death. And when I say that, I don't say it lightly.
Their own federal government who is dishing out death. What kind of narrative are they trying to set? If your government's killing you, you have a natural right to fight back. Of course you do. Nobody would say you wouldn't. No red-blooded American would say you wouldn't. But is the government actually trying to kill you? Or are they trying to just enforce laws? If your entire livelihood and your entire existence depends on breaking the law, might want to find a new livelihood. And I don't know what else to say about that. Okay, so I want to talk about something really interesting because it plays into all of this. Elon Musk retweeted this yesterday from Bukele down in El Salvador. That's the president of El Salvador, by the way. And it's a really fascinating experiment that was done. It was called the John Calhoun. He did Universe 25, which was an experiment with mice. And this is absolutely fascinating. So let's read through this together. We're going to read two synopsises of this because it's worth looking at this twice. So the Universe 25 experiment is one of the most terrifying experiments in the history of science, which through the behavior of a colony of mice is an attempt by scientists to explain human societies. The idea of Universe 25 came from the American scientist John Calhoun, who created the, quote, ideal world in which hundreds of mice would live and reproduce. Anytime anybody's on like the socialist end of things, they always talk about creating this utopian society, solving all of the world's problems. Right now, you've got Elon Musk even talking about, universal high income, and we won't need to work anymore. Well, this creates a lack of purpose. And we're going to see that through this experiment. The idea of Universe 25 came from the American scientist John Calhoun. Ponyboy says, I guess Crockett never heard of Seth Rich. Yeah, no kidding. And, if you stand against truth, it doesn't matter if you're standing against the right or the left, you're going to be attacked. There might be a slight less possibility someone on the right would drone strike you, but you're still going to be attacked, especially politically. Okay, back to this. American scientist John Calhoun, who created an ideal world in which hundreds of mice would live and reproduce. More specifically, Calhoun built the so-called, quote, paradise of mice, a specifically designed space where rodents had abundance of food and water, as well as a large living space. In the beginning, he placed 4 pairs of mice, and in that short time began to reproduce, resulting in their population growing rapidly. However, after 315 days, the reproduction began to decrease significantly. When the number of rodents reached 600, a hierarchy was formed between them and the so-called wretches appeared. The larger rodents began to attack the group, with the result that many males began to collapse psychologically. As a result, the females did not protect themselves and in turn became aggressive towards their young. As time went on, the females showed more and more aggressive behavior, isolation elements, and lack of reproductive mood. There was a low birth rate and at the same time an increase in mortality in younger rodents. Then a new class of male rodents appeared, the so-called beautiful mice. They refused to mate with the females or to fight for their space. All they cared about was food and sleep. At one point, beautiful males and isolated females made up the majority of the population. As time went on, juvenile mortality reached 100%, and reproduction reached 0. Among the endangered mice, homosexuality was observed, and at the same time, cannibalism increased, despite the fact that there was plenty of food. 2 years after the start of the experiment, the last baby of the colony was born. By 1973, he had killed the last mouse in Universe 25. John Calhoun repeated the same experiment 25 more times, each time the result was the same. So that was posted by Elon Musk yesterday, and it originally came from Bukele. And so then there's a follow-up post on this that I want to share with you, and this comes from Mario Nawfal. Nawfal, I'm mispronouncing his last name. I apologize. He's not based in America. He's based out in Asia somewhere. But this is what he has to say about this, and I'll go ahead and share this with you guys so you can see it as well. The beautiful mice are already here. John Calhoun gave his mice everything: unlimited food, perfect climate. Perfect climate, no predators, ideal nesting spaces. They responded by going insane, refused to breed, and eating each other despite full feeders. The Universe 25 experiment didn't just predict social collapse. It documented the exact stages we're living through right now. We're not approaching the behavioral sink. We're in it. Look at the parallels. Calhoun's mice found rigid hierarchies where wretches emerged outcast, acting randomly unable to function socially. Today's school shooters and rage-filled comment sections are different phenomenon. They're the same behavioral collapse in human form. Males retreating into themselves, females becoming hyper-aggressive toward their own offspring. Sound familiar? Birth rates cratering across developed nations, while parents treat children like lifestyle accessories or abandonment targets. But here's the truly terrifying part, the beautiful mice. These were males who withdrew completely, spending all of their time grooming, eating, and sleeping. They refused to mate, fight, or engage socially. They just existed, perfectly content in their self-care routines. Open Instagram, watch the endless grooming videos, the food porn, the sleep optimization content. Millions of young men choosing pets over children, young people choosing pets over children, skincare over relationship, personal brands over actual connections. The beautiful mice didn't die fighting. They died perfectly moisturized and alone. Calhoun discovered abundance itself becomes toxic when social roles collapse. His mice had every physical need met, but lost the behavioral patterns that gave life meaning. We've created the same condition: infinite entertainment, unlimited porn, endless food delivery, virtual everything. No need to hunt, fight, build, or even mate. Just consume and groom until the population quietly zeroes out. The experiment succeeded 25 times. Same result every single time. Wow. So I had heard about the mice experiment. I didn't know it was called Universe 25, and it had been a long time since I had even thought about it. So I was really glad to be reminded of it, which brings us to this Nicole Shanahan video where she kind of went full whistleblower on what she calls the tech wife mafia. And again, this comes down to the wretches, and it comes down to the beautiful mice. And here you go. They're being controlled by people who want to steer and direct you.
What happened around the pandemic is that this whole other segment, what I don't think many of the tech mafia wives realize is that they were used to set the groundwork for what was called like the reset, what is called generally as like the reset by the Klaus Schwabs,
like the Great
world.
Reset.
The Great Reset. Yeah. They openly talk about this Great Reset.
Yeah.
So the tech wife mafias, I believe, were kind of being conscripted in many ways, and their money especially was being conscripted in to set the groundwork for the Great Reset.
Yeah. Specifically through
a network of NGO advisors, relationship with Hollywood, relationship with Davos, and their own companies. So if you look at like who's on these boards, who hangs out with each other, how the culture of tech wealth works, like Silicon Valley tech wealth, and that small group of people responsible for a huge amount of money and a huge amount of NGO activity across the United States. It's a really small group of people, and it's a really small group of people making these decisions.
Yeah.
And then completely blind to everything else that's going on and how their groundwork is being used to then enable these other policies, these Great Reset policies. Now, what this group of women doesn't realize is that in their haste, these women are all very busy.
Yeah.
They have multiple properties. They have tons of staff. They have staff issues, chronic staff issues. Their kids are busy. Their kids oftentimes have some health issues as well. A lot of them have relationship issues with their husbands. And a lot of them themselves are like medicated on SSRIs and antidepressants and all of that because it's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, so it's chaos, and these women find their meaning through their philanthropic work.
Yeah.
And they find themselves. Like I would find myself. That was my self-worth, was my philanthropic work, and I really believed in it.
Mm-hmm.
I really believed that I was giving Black communities a chance to like rise up out of oppression. I really believed that I was helping Indigenous communities rise up out of oppression. And now that I look back and see how all those grants were forming, you know, because my version of success is those communities are actually uplifted.
Yeah. Not just more money pumped into them.
Not just more money. No, the problems of the community have gotten worse. Crime in the community has gotten worse. Mental health in the Native community, the Indigenous community, has gotten worse. They will even say, the Indigenous community will even say that their biggest supporters in Congress have been Republicans, but yet they continue to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is this, it's like, the whole model is broken. The whole model makes everybody worse off. And now we're contending with the frickin' Great Reset that we're now realizing is a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that many of our climate change issues are geoengineering issues.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is like, at the end of the day, they always go to that. They're like, but climate change. And then,
yeah,
and
that really is the end all be all. Like, you have to let us do this because of climate change.
Yeah. Social justice and climate change, it always boils down to those two things, and it gets progressive women 100% of the time.
What he's saying there is the exact same thing that Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather were talking about that we had on the show yesterday, right? That women that don't have children or wait a long time to have children or don't have to be nurturing or whatever, they find another child. They find social justice. You know, since I don't have my own household to make better, I'm going to make your household better. And they adopt you, except you don't want to be adopted. I don't want your help, right? Everything they're doing works against it. Now they've got good intention because they're got their motherly instinct, but then they're also messed up. They've got bad relationships. They've got, you know, they're not entrepreneurs, business owners, like she was talking about, staff problems. You know, these are consistent issues. It's pretty stunning. Okay, I've got a couple listeners over on X. If you guys wouldn't mind jumping over onto Rumble, you could probably just click the video link or whatever. It'll take you into Rumble. I need to jump my Rumble audience just a little bit because I have to read some ads and I have to hit a minimum amount on Rumble. And again, like yesterday, it seems like I've got more people watching on X. So if you can, just jump over. If I see enough people, I'll hurry up and do an ad. I got to do like 2 before the end of the month. And I don't want to be streaming trying to get enough people on here tomorrow. So anyways, I'd like to get it all done today if possible, but I'd be happy to stream tomorrow, even though it is a travel day again for me. Okay, so that was Nicole Shanahan, and you see it in the raw data. Now, Elon Musk has been talking about population for a long time, and I saw this chart circulating yesterday, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And this one is posted by Mike Lee. It says, where deaths outnumber birth, things are changing fast and not for the better. Life needs to win over death. Seems obvious. With love, hope, and new life, with more kids and more babies. So what this is, let's look at it here. Let's zoom it in. So you've got where deaths outnumber births. In the beige, whatever khaki color here is, you know, more deaths. And then dark blue is more births. In 2011, 2014, a big chunk of the country was blue. A couple little spots. I know Coos Bay, Oregon, where I was born, apparently they had more deaths. That's kind of an economically depressed area. The Olympic Peninsula, where I work, logging is pretty much gone. Yeah, it's kind of just retirees at this point. Fast forward to 2016, 2019, you see a little less blue. 21 to 22, wow. Now notice, 2014 to 2019, there's some changing there, but for the most part, you could almost say there's maybe more blue right here. I'd love to see some percentages. So during Trump's administration, you had more blue. During Biden's administration, look at this, instant reversal. Now, a lot of people believe that after COVID, there would be a population boom. We're not seeing that, are we? We're We're not seeing that at all. In fact, we're seeing deaths outpace births. What's causing this? What are all the things that could cause this since 2020? COVID. COVID could accelerate the rate of death. Absolutely. You could have higher infant mortality. Think about the mice experiment. You've got, higher violence and crime in that time period, which I think, you have to basically manipulate stats to make it an affirmative one way or the other. But I would say pretty resolutely there was higher crime from 2021 to 2022. If you jump to 2023 to 2024, it's kind of continuing. I mean, a couple more people, if you look over here where it's all beige, here in the Midwest and South, you're starting to see some more blue pop up. So maybe we're turning the tide. Maybe we can get back to this, but this is a problem. When the Biden administration flooded the border, right, they were trying to compensate for something, clearly. Compensate for death, in my opinion. A mass kill off of legacy Americans. A lot of those people coming south of the border actually didn't get vaccines, believe it or not. They didn't come over with a whole 47 vaccines shoved in their body when they're little kids. This is a little bit funny, but it also kind of goes to this beautiful mice syndrome. So this is Kim Kardashian. She's got some, she's always got some TV show or whatever, but she's meeting with her doctor and she got some brain scans. And turns out she's kind of brain dead. This is freaking hilarious.
What are those holes?
Yeah, I don't like that. So what the holes mean is low activity. Compared to this one, the front part of your brain is less active than it should be. With your frontal lobes as they work now, it would be harder to manage stress. And that's not good for you, especially as you're studying and you're getting ready to take the boards.
That just can't be. It just can't. Not accepting.
For whatever reason, you're not getting, and it could be the chronic stress that you've been under trying to think about taking the boards in a couple of months and studying 10 hours a day, not to mention all the other things that go on in your life.
Yeah.
But we have to make it better.
I got to get on a plan to really figure this out because I have some to do this summer.
She's got some stuff to do this summer, but she's brain dead. She's got reduced brain activity. I just find that really hilarious. I don't know how it all ties in. I don't know what's really going on there, but that is freaking hilarious that she had like those scans and she's like, turns out I can't think. All right. So back to Mike Lee. Mike Lee also posted this with regards to these immigrants coming in from Afghanistan. Okay. He said, in 2021, a member of my staff met with Representative Mormon Women for Ethical Government, NWEG, advocating aggressively for legislation helping Afghan nationals to immigrate to the United States. Our virtue is weaponized against us. These are Mormons. Okay, these are Mormons. Some of the most kind-hearted, charitable people you will find on the face of the planet. These are really good people. Explaining the significant safety concern presented by such legislation, my staffer told WEG representative, quote, we know of at least 60 Afghans brought here to the U.S. without proper vetting as part of the Biden withdrawal, whose fingerprints were found on bombs meant to kill Americans. So in this batch of Afghanistans that came over, they knew at that moment of at least 60 that literally had their fingerprints on the bombs that were used to kill Americans, and we brought them into the United States. The NWEG representative responded by saying, this is the zeitgeist talking. This is them watching too much Disney Plus. This is them watching too much ESPN. This is them watching too much MSNBC and CNN and Nicole Welch and Jasmine Crockett and all the NGOs that fund this stuff. The WEG representative responded by saying, we all know it's white American males who are the real threat, not the refugees from Afghanistan. End quote. Why was MWEG, along with so many leftist groups, so determined to turn a blind eye to the obvious risk presented by their urgent plea to fast-track refugees? Let's take a look at some of these reasons why they were fast-tracking the refugees coming in. If you take a look at this, okay, this broke yesterday, or actually I think it broke this morning. This broke this morning. Now, John Solomon, really great reporter, and he's at Just the News, and all of his reporters are excellent. Great news, but they have become kind of an outlet for leaks from the right. So if the right needs to put something into the narrative so that then the government can respond, they're going to leak it through certain actors that we know. For example, they'll leak it through John Solomon. They'll leak it through Julie Kelly if it has to deal with Dan Bongino, Kash Patel issues. Certain people that they'll kind of leak things through. It's also where they get their cover-ups. That's kind of the sad thing about this, is now John Solomon's got that inside track, cover-up track. Now, if he stays true to his credentials and he always posts the evidence and the data, then I think we'll be okay. But just like anybody, we're only as good as the information we have. We have to look at it. We have to assess it. But Mike Benz posted this about the Just the News. He said, incredibly important story broke just now by Just the News, revealing the CIA quietly struck a secret deal with Afghan militias they were working with on the ground to guarantee them refugee status in the U.S. CIA cut a deal bringing Afghan Zero Unit fighters, including accused guardsman killer, to the U.S. So the CIA cut a deal to get these militants, these murderers, cold-blooded murderers, to get a refugee and asylum status here. Somebody made the comment yesterday. They said, finding allies overseas to fight their domestic enemies is one thing. Bringing those people who fought for their country, their tradition, their culture into, and they're fighting for us for things like oil and anti-terrorism and anti-drugs. That's not why they're fighting. That's why we're fighting. But they see us as an ally because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But as soon as you bring them over here, there's cultural oil and water going on. What they thought they were fighting for, when they see what we were fighting for, they're disenfranchised. Tale as old as time. Mike Benz has been talking about how, I didn't even share that with you guys. Mike Benz has been talking about, which it's gone now, so I can't share it with you, but it was just a post. So Mike Benz has been talking about this, about how every time the CIA takes covert action in other countries, it's followed by a resettlement program. Haiti, and he goes through a whole list of things, and it goes back years and years and years, all the way back to Vietnam, where we took in refugees. Now, back in Vietnam, a lot of those refugees were probably legitimate. I don't remember hearing about a bunch of Vietnamese violence or anything like that. But nonetheless, right, they brought in a few bad actors. It's just the way it works. But here's Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor, basically a couple years ago when the withdrawal started to happen. And he, Mr. Warhawk himself, is like, we have to take care of these Afghanis.
We're going to get this done. This is the right thing to do. There's no other ending that is acceptable to me. The people who were there with us in the fight that are here in America need to stay. This will be their new home, so we have a moral obligation to these people. They will make great citizens over time. We're going to get this done. This is the right.
So there's Lindsey Graham saying that these Afghanis who have a culture that is absolutely antithetical to ours will make great citizens over time. That, of course, is assuming that they actually want to assimilate. Do they? Probably not as much as we would hope. House of Foreign Affairs Committee majority, this is a congressional post, in a foreign affairs investigation into a Biden administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, a couple things were found out. You'll hear these talking points going out right now about how these people were vetted. Okay. In 2022 to 2024, we identified gaping holes in the vetting of Afghan nationals. Here we make specific notes of systematic problems like Afghans being put on planes without proof of ID, biometric screening, and many other basic vetting protocols which were totally ignored. Lack of documentation and no data tracking system resulted in flawed vetting process. No idea of people being evacuated were threats. We didn't have access to systems or databases that were crucial to determining the eligibility of evacuees. Biometric screening was not available to vet evacuees at HKIA. 5 cases of Afghanistan who were presented U.S. passports were not their own. A high number of Afghan evacuees landed in the country with no real identification. According to Ambassador Holtz, the State Department created these temporary passports, literally a piece of paper with a photo that was taken right then and there at the fight line. Failure by the State Department to maintain records of Afghan refugees. It feels intentional. Open the door, let them in. When I heard Lindsey Graham saying that, I immediately thought to myself, these guys know their sins. This is covering up their sins. This is making sure the Taliban can't get at them. Taliban can't find out their information. Bad news bears. And the real tragedy of all of this is for years and years and years, we weren't allowed to talk about this. Like what Donald Trump said, right? They weaponized our virtue and they use it against us. Yeah. Now, Trump has been pretty good in his international scheming to get other countries to act. This morning, he put out a post about tariffs and how our enemies are working at the Supreme Court to try to overturn Trump's tariffs, which have led to peace accords, treaties, rearranged trade deals. He's resetting the world order so that every country can basically take care of itself, that they're not dependent on other countries. And one of the countries that he's targeted to try to get off of foreign dependency, including the United States' dependency, else they become a 51st state, is Canada. The Last Refuge posted this. Carney now announces restrictions on imported steel and aluminum, as well as restrictions on imported derivative goods that come from steel and aluminum, in combination with a spending plan to bolster the Canadian steel and aluminum industry. I forgot to share this with you guys. To bolster the Canadian steel and aluminum industry. This ends up shifting the Canadian industrial sector to making steel and aluminum products without Chinese import dependency. Exactly what Trump demanded. Boom, 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 boom. If the northern neighbors can secure their economy, that'll be so good for us. They don't need to become the 51st state. But as long as they're on the dole, they have to be the 51st state. They also can't be the entry point for foreign goods coming into their country and then coming over, the border into our country with products labeled as North American or whatever. So that's wonderful. Yesterday we talked about over in Ukraine, Zelensky's chief of staff's office was being raided. Well, towards the end of the day, he ended up resigning. So the chief of staff resigned. Mario Nawfal posted this again. Shout out to him. Zelensky's worst nightmare, corruption scandal, validates every critic. By the way, I don't know that he's on the right. I don't think he is. Andrei Yermak's resignation after corruption raids could not have come at a worse moment. Share this with you guys. Could not have come at a worse moment. Trump's peace plan demands territorial concessions. Congress debates cutting aid, and American isolationists need exactly one excuse to abandon Ukraine entirely. Zelensky just handed it to them on a silver platter. His closest aide, the man who controlled everything from peace negotiations to presidential access, caught up in a $100 million kickback scheme while Ukrainians freeze in blackouts. For years, Ukrainians' critics painted every dollar of aid as feeding corruption. Zelensky spent immense political capital convincing Washington otherwise, hosting oversight delegations, creating anti-corruption agencies, improving transparency rankings from 144th to 105th globally. None of that matters now. The headlines write themselves. Zelensky's right hand caught in massive corruption probe. Every congressman who opposed Ukraine aid feels vindicated. Every Tucker Carlson segment predicted this. The timing devastates Ukraine's negotiation position. Yermak wasn't just chief of staff. He was Ukraine's primary peace negotiator, the direct line foreign leaders used to reach Zelensky. And he was getting kickbacks from the military contracts, right? $100 million kickback scheme, which means he had a personal interest in continuing the war and the slaughter of Russian and Ukrainian peoples. His removal creates a power vacuum exactly when Ukraine needed unified leadership to resist Trump's territorial demands. Trump is basically talking about letting Russia have the land they conquered. Opposition parties smell blood, demanding national unity governments and questioning Zelensky's judgment. How do you negotiate from strength when your own government is imploding? Here's what makes this catastrophic. The scandal involves energy infrastructure kickbacks, while Russia systematically destroys Ukraine's power grid. Officials allegedly profited from electricity contracts while citizens endure rolling blackouts. The optics couldn't be worse. Ukraine asked for more Patriot batteries and power equipment while investigators uncover schemes inflating the costs of those contracts. Every future aid request now carries the stench of suspicion. Zelensky knows American support was already wavering. The scandal doesn't just validate critics, it exhausts defenders. Senators who fought for Ukraine packages now have to explain why their constituents should fund a government where the president's top aide allegedly ran procurement rackets during an existential war. That's an impossible sell in America, already skeptical about foreign entanglements. Wow. That is, again, stunning. His chief of staff is being investigated for fraud. Now, you might think to yourself, well, that of course that would happen in Ukraine. They were 144th in corruption, and somehow they got to 105th, right? But Elon Musk, when he did Doge, he revealed that the same basic thing is happening here in the United States. For example, there was a very large contract to go build more nuclear submarines. I don't know if you know this or not, but we haven't gotten any new nuclear submarines anytime recently.
The federal government is not break even. It's literally losing $2 trillion a year. and it does not pass its audits. It fails its own audits. So, like, there's a case where, like, I think Senator Collins was telling me about how she gave the Navy $12 billion for more submarines, got no extra submarines, and then held a hearing to say where'd the $12 billion go, and they were like, we don't know. That was it. I mean, basically, stuff is so crazy. It's like only the federal government could get away with this level of waste of
waste, fraud, and abuse, and awful corruption. $12 billion. How many subs did we get? None. Where did money go? I don't know. $100 million kickbacks in Ukraine, and essentially the Ukrainian government is imploding. Where did the $12 billion go? Where'd the billions of dollars coming out of the EPA go? Where'd the billions of dollars coming out of the Department of Transportation go? Like what Sean Duffy was saying yesterday. Where's this money, guys? And that's money on government contracts. That's not even money that's being wasted by, illegal immigrants or the social safety net programs that are being abused. Now, Trump has been going out into these cities, right? He's threatening to go into Chicago. By the way, did you know that Chicago and LA make up 52% of all murders in the United States? 52%. 2 counties in America make up 52% of all murders in the United States. Wow. Right. But every major city has homeless problems, has drug problems, has urban decay. It's pretty bad. San Francisco being almost at the top of that chart. Remember, there's actually apps there so you can avoid the piles of crap on the sidewalk. Well, Trump threatened to come into San Francisco. And right as he did that, the mayor of San Francisco and probably state government as well came in and they said, we'll clean things up. Please don't come here. Please don't come here. And so they did just that.
Here's the main thing hindering San Francisco's recovery. Last weekend, there was a surge to arrest drug dealers in San Francisco. 79 arrests were made. It was a partnership between SFPD and the feds, thanks to Daniel Lurie's successful avoidance of the National Guard in the city. Of those 79 arrests, if you were brought up by the feds, you most certainly will face prison time and then deportation. But if you're arrested by SFPD, you're going to go before a Superior Court judge here in San Francisco, and you're going to be referred to diversion and then eventually released. That means if you're a drug dealer on the streets of San Francisco and you're arrested by SFPD, you'll most likely walk free. The main thing hindering our recovery in the city is our terrible judges. We need to vote them out of office and bring in better people who are going to create accountability for the craziness on our streets if we want the city to get clean.
Okay, so the feds came in and they helped identify the drug dealers, probably with a lot of the help from the locals. And then the feds then they arrested them locally instead of the feds. If they got arrested by the feds, they'd be, put away in federal prison. Instead, they're going to go through the local process, which with the way the judges have been acting, they're likely going to get put back out on the street. Now, I know it's Saturday morning, and I know a lot of you guys are just sitting comfortably, probably enjoying your coffee. But if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped. Only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin-free, mold-free. Plus, you're also getting a golden spoon clip because freedom is not scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine. But that stands for something just like Rumble does. So yes, go check out 1775 coffee. Woo, glad we got one of those in. I got to try to do a couple more. Everybody who's on Rumble, stay on Rumble. Don't leave. We got to do another one of those in like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Okay, so now let's go back into our scheduled program. Kash Patel sat down with Jan, you guys can read this name with me. I have a last name that's complicated, Jonatakis. It's been mispronounced my whole life. So I'm just saying, listen, I'm not mispronouncing your name by any, I recognize some names are hard to pronounce. Jan Jikilik. I'm sure it's probably an easy sounding name, and if I heard it, I would recognize it. But either way, this is, he sat down with Kash Patel, and they were talking about going after Antifa and the tool that President Trump gave them to go after Antifa by declaring Antifa a domestic terror organization.
So the president has labeled Antifa as a domestic terror organization. Now,
What is the impact of that on your work dealing with Antifa and related organizations?
No, it's absolutely brilliant move by President Trump, because it allows us to use the tool set that we utilize for, say, foreign terrorist organizations. We are allowed to use that here in the United States of America to use added intelligence capabilities, to added operational capabilities in terms of mapping out the networks and seeing how they connect, and using the banking sector and the financial sector and our partners at Treasury, most importantly, because these groups, Antifa specifically, responsible for, as you know, the Prairie Land attack, which we've arrested, I think, 24 individuals on and charged them with material support to terrorism, and rightly so. They shot a federal agent in the neck and attacked a detention facility. We know what Antifa has done in Portland. Those investigations and prosecutions are ongoing. So we're treating them as a terrorist organization that they are, and mapping out the money. And you know this from me. I've always said, follow the money. So with our partners in Treasury, we are following the money and mapping out this entire network and treating them as a terrorist organization under the authorities the president has given us. And I think in the turn of the new year, you're going to see some very righteous prosecutions and investigations being publicized.
I look forward to that. Very righteous arrests and prosecutions being publicized. That would be absolutely wonderful. So that's an affirmation that they are in fact going after Antifa, and they're looking at it as a terrorist organization. SAW8509959. Howdy, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining us there. I don't recognize your screen name, so you must be a new person, or maybe someone we know with a screen name I don't recognize. Anyways, welcome. I'm glad you made it today. Okay, so they're mapping out these terror organizations. Now, when you think of Antifa, most people think of Portland and Seattle. Okay, Portland and Seattle. Antifa was active at the Multnomah County Courthouse in 2020. They've never left the streets of Portland or Seattle. Antifa, combined with Black Lives Matter, was a big part behind the Chaz Chop episode up in Seattle. This is the governor of Oregon right now. She put out this video basically telling the feds, if you arrest any ICE protesters, aka Antifa, you'll be prosecuted at the state level. This is, again, another stunning example of states insurrecting against the federal government.
Hello, Oregon. Governor Kotek here. I want to talk with you about something that should concern every one of us. I believe, as you do, in the rule of law and keeping our community safe. We also believe in being a welcoming place where our immigrant and refugee communities help our state thrive.
Weaponizing your virtue. Put that phrase in your head. Anybody who tries to weaponize your virtue to cause you to be self-cannibalistic, to destroy your culture, your way of life, your financial status, to divest yourself of your private property, anybody who tries to weaponize your virtue against you, who preaches sacrifice on behalf of a nebulous the people or society or the world, is a second-hander, is a looter, and is an agent of death. Okay, this is not good. Yes, we all want law and order, but what she's talking about, you're weaponizing the virtue.
Violent actions of the Federal Department of Homeland Security are unacceptable, going after Oregonians and stoking fear in the name of immigration enforcement, but using excessive force, reckless tactics, and even putting bystanders and local law enforcement in danger. It's not how public safety works, and it's not okay in Oregon. No government agency is above the law. I fully support the AG and local DAs who have put the federal government on notice. Oregon is monitoring all ICE actions closely. We will investigate misconduct, and if a federal officer breaks Oregon law, they will be held accountable, just like anyone else. I will not tolerate reckless or unconstitutional behavior in our state. While ICE activity has seen an uptick in recent weeks, so is the commitment of Oregonians to show up for each other, taking care of their neighbors, and standing up when they see something that isn't right. Thank you for doing that. Let's continue to work together to defend the safety, dignity, and rights of every Oregonian. Thank you.
Well, it's almost like she's never heard of the supremacy clause of the Constitution, so there's that. SAW8509959. I'm just going to call you SWA because it's easier to say. The TDSers are the result of a quoxine and 24/7, 365 brain scramble from the Communist Party of America, aka the Dems. Party-friendly newscasters to spew exactly what the CPA scripts them to say. I'm pretty sure that's CIA. Yep. Yes, probably CIA. I agree. Totally. I completely agree. One of the things I've mentioned in the past is, throughout history, we've had these congressional hearings, Senate hearings, where we hear about things like MK Ultra or Operation Paperclip or Operation Mockingbird. And I often ask, did they ever say they stopped? I mean, they admitted that they had done it and they made it in the past tense, but I'm curious, did they ever say they stopped? And the answer is, I don't think they ever did. I don't think they ever stopped. And, it slips out from time to time. Like when Gallego's like, yeah, I didn't get the script in time. Scott Adams did an episode yesterday where he talked about how Grok still isn't up to speed on some of this stuff. And Grok gives the ultimate benefit of the doubt. All AI, I'm sure, gives the ultimate benefit of the doubt to the government, right? Unless you cue it to kind of assess like percentages on what are the chances they're lying to us. And it was saying, he said there was a script, but there's no evidence that it came from the CIA or whatever. Okay, well, it came from somebody, and that somebody wrote it, and that somebody was getting paid. And if you find out that money's coming through USAID, which is a CIA cutout, you know what I mean? You start to see, or you start to see it's coming from the Democrat Party, which, as SWA here mentions, is, the Communist Party of America. You're reading a script. That's the whole point there. Representative Anna Paulina Lona, in regards to this immigration stuff, which again, this is what Antifa is using as their big thing to go protest ICE all around the country, right? She's saying these illegal, well, we'll play it now.
In administration, that our system is bogged down. In fact, a majority of the cases that we take as congressional offices, constituent services are immigration related. We have people wanting to come here legally, but they can't even get through the process because, again, so many people have come here the wrong way. And so I would actually say that we need to pause everything until the system can actually catch up. But yes, there's no reason why we need to be taking in people that A, don't want to assimilate, and B, I don't even know that they can contribute much to the current society that we have because they might not actually be skilled in whatever they are trying to come here for. And so I back him on that, but it's unfortunate what happened because had the proper vetting been done, right, I don't believe that this individual would have been able to come to this country. In administration, that our system is bogged down. In fact,
and she's right. Had the vetting been done properly, they wouldn't have been allowed to come to the country. And we just read all that about Afghanistan. SWA says Beijing Biden exterminated 500,000 Americans with fentanyl with Biden's China-made chemical weapon. I agree with that. Fentanyl, as well as I believe China had a huge role in COVID. I can't put everything on them because clearly we had some involvement in the funding of it. But yeah, I mean, don't make me defend the government. Okay. So these immigrants that have come in, they're going to be up for a pretty rude surprise here pretty soon. They're going to find out that all immigrants who have been on public charge, aka any welfare benefits, starting in February of this upcoming year, are going to start having their benefits denied, and they're going to end up being deported if they've ever accepted those benefits.
Well, in some immigration news, it looks like DHS is going to be changing the rules when it comes to an adjustment of status starting in February. So if the petitioner has ever received any sort of government assistance, Medicaid, food stamps, Section 8 housing, they are going to start denying the green card for the applicant. This comes part of the public charge rule. It's being broadened, and they're also giving the officers more discretion. They're removing the narrow list that the officers go by, and they're letting the officer make the call based on the totality of the circumstances. So this also applies to people that live with you. So if you have extended family living in the house and they're on government assistance like Medicaid or food stamps, that can also be determined by the officer to be a factor to actually deny your green card because they're going to consider you a public charge. Now, it looks like these rules are probably going to go into effect the late February. So if you're thinking of doing an application, if you want to sponsor your spouse or someone close to you, I would recommend that you file the application as soon as possible. This way you're grandfathered into the older set of rules. And it looks like immigration is starting to get a lot harder. They're putting more hurdles in, more hoops you're going to have to jump through. And honestly, I really feel bad for people that are using the preparers or just someone that's not as qualified as an attorney, because I foresee a lot of denials and a lot of people being sent to removal in the future. So if you have questions about this, of course, you can use the link in my bio to schedule a consultation. I would be more than happy to discuss your case with you.
Okay, so if you're an illegal immigrant and you need some reprieve, give that guy a call. So that's pretty interesting. That's going to send a shockwave through the immigrant community. Another thing that happened yesterday was Scott Bessent announced that all transactions going overseas, remittances, right? Foreigners come here, they earn money, and they send about half of it back overseas to their families where they're from. This is a big deal, right? This is draining the wealth away from us. Every dollar that gets overseas by some Mexican on a roof somewhere, A, that's one job that an American doesn't have, and B, he's taking a portion of that wealth, those wages, and sending it overseas, thus requiring inflation to resupply that money. It's not a good thing. We want to keep the money here so we don't have to inflate and add more money to the system all the time. By them stopping that, they're stopping the welfare benefits, stopping the ability for those that possibly aren't on welfare to send remittances, or worse off, use their welfare money to send back as the remittance. That's going to cause a flood of people to leave this country. The reason is there's no reason to be here, right? Unless you have assimilated. If you have assimilated, make your case. But most of them have not, and many of them have unlawfully taken advantage of us. So this, and it doesn't just affect illegal immigrants. This is also going to affect American citizens who have been abusing the system. Here's an example of one woman on TikTok who just got a visit from her state welfare fraud office.
So the welfare fraud department of my county just left my house. Are you guys happy? Are you guys happy? I get a knock at my door. I open the door. And of course, there's 3 people in, nice work clothes, whatever. I thought it was CPS. Okay, big surprise there. No. It's the welfare fraud
She thought it was CPS.
department. I didn't even know there was a welfare fraud department. Okay, so
I was unaware that anybody was checking up on this stuff. I thought I could just receive multiple benefits.
With everything that I have going on, with my food stamps and everything, they are going to be tracking every single paper trail that I have had attached to my name for the last 10 years. They are going to be digging up everything. I am possibly facing criminal charges for this. This is not just something where they take your food stamps, for a couple weeks, or no. This is actually criminal. So I hope you guys are happy.
Yes, we are. She's an American citizen, clearly. I want there to be a social safety net for single moms, widows, orphans, and stuff like that, but I don't want it to be abused. I'd rather it be followed to the letter of the law so that we can make it bigger and bigger and bigger. But every dollar that gets stolen out of is a dollar that can't go to someone that's needy, because clearly if it was stolen, the person didn't need it. She probably spends a lot of time trying to keep her reported income low enough to qualify for benefits. And the reason she's concerned about them tracking every piece of paper is because she's probably bought cars where how did you buy this car? You can't qualify for welfare and buy a $40,000 car, right? You can't qualify for welfare and buy a house or rent an apartment for that much. Where's the money coming from? They're going to start asking questions, both to foreigners and to domestics. There's a phrase that I say often at 1776live.us, and that is, when you accept the benefit, they own you. When you accept welfare benefits or benefits of the state, they own you. Some benefits you're entitled to as a birthright citizen and as a naturalized citizen, but some benefits you're not entitled to, right? And if you accept the benefit, and which means you have an agreement to do what they want, follow the law, don't get in trouble, don't commit fraud, et cetera, which fraud, you should never commit anyways. A lot of people are going to be in for a really rude surprise. And the reason is because, going back with that theme, our virtue has been weaponized against us. An entire generation of Americans have been iced out of housing, iced out of jobs, and it's finally time to start talking about this. This was Fox Business, where they really went into a little bit of detail about how illegal immigration has put pressure on housing, which is probably the area of most discontent amongst younger Americans.
I think people will call, because the new number that's being floated now is 30 million illegals have gotten into this country over the course of the last 4 years of the Biden administration. 30 million. We sit here and we talk about housing shortages. We talk about supply that isn't on the market. And people will turn around and say, oh, but The houses you're talking about aren't the ones that the illegal migrants are buying. Okay, let's talk about houses that are, sub 500,000. They might be buying them. They also are renters. They also are using this public housing. And we have a massive problem in the rental market with rents skyrocketing. Yeah, because 30 million people came. Where did they go? Some of them got government assistance. Some of them had to go find a place to live. So, we've got to do something about this. And as I've always said, there's a certain amount of this illegal immigration that was baked into the cake. It worked in the system because we needed the workers. Nobody really said anything. They looked the other way. When the Biden administration opened up the floodgates and decided to let 30 million people in the country, they went way too far and created a situation where Trump now has to crack down on immigration like we have never seen before. And you've got problems like this arising too.
Right. Yeah, you got problems like this arising too. It's unbelievable, right? These people had to go somewhere. When people act like, well, this didn't put pressure on housing. Yes, it did. Why do you think prices doubled in like 4 years? 30 million people crossed the border. We've heard 10, we've heard 15, we've heard 20, and now they're releasing official numbers. I mean, this is what they're saying. There's 30 million people who crossed the border in 4 years. That's more houses than were built. That's more cars than were delivered to the marketplace. That has put upward price pressure on everything because demand was increased simultaneously while the Biden regime was injecting massive amounts of money into the system. Inflation raised prices, demand raised prices, and now we're sitting on top of a giant bubble, and we've gotten to the point where our culture is reaching a breaking point, which is why Kaylee McGee White says it's time to discuss our culture. It's time to discuss preserving our culture. This has been taboo. It has been taboo to talk about American exceptionalism. It has been taboo to talk about the greatness of our culture and to just generally love ourselves.
We do not have any obligation whatsoever to anyone to allow them entry into our country and to all of the benefits that offers. We don't have any obligation to do that. And quite frankly, it's asinine that we can't have a realistic policy conversation about how certain cultures are quite literally incompatible with ours. It should be okay to say that. And more importantly, it should be okay to base our immigration policy on that. So I'm glad that President Trump is taking some steps in that direction because it is a long time coming. And
I will say this. It is fair to say that American culture is compatible with most other cultures. You can drop an American into a Muslim community, a Hindu community, a Buddhist community. For the most part, they'll do fine, right? But other cultures are not compatible with ours. That's the difference. And I'm not saying universally our culture isn't compatible with others and there wouldn't be problems if you dropped in somewhere else, but they wouldn't be at the magnitude that you have here. Because remember, American culture and Western cultures respects diverse ideas. Marxist, Islamic, communist cultures do not respect diverse ideas. It's that simple. It's not complicated, right? So we can go over there and respect their ideas, but when they come over here, they don't respect our ideas. SWA says just that change alone will save trillions of dollars. If the immigrants have been here for years and have not tried to become legal, you are a criminal. President Trump's actions are what I voted for. Me too, except I didn't get the vote in the last election because I was in prison. But yes, right, this is what most Americans voted for. The only way to save the social safety net, the only way to get the younger generations into housing and get a piece of the American dream is to get the illegal immigrants out. It's not xenophobic. It's not because we didn't have warm hearts and welcome them in. It's because we got taken advantage of. And anybody who gets taken advantage of long enough, eventually they crack, they break, and that's where we're at. It's over. It's over. Right? The nice stuff is over. This is like when you have a teenage kid that's, when they're 12, they're talking back to their mom and you kind of are like treating it right. And then 13, they get a little pushy, they're going through puberty. They're exploring their big muscles. I've had a couple teenagers, but then eventually at some point, dad has to come in and lay down the law. This line you will not cross while you're under my roof. Because why? It's my roof and I pay for it. And as long as you live here, you won't talk back to mom. You're going to do your dishes. You're going to do your chores. You're going to pay for your own gas, your own insurance, right? The free ride is over. If you want to act like an adult when you're 16, then you're going to have some training wheels and you're going to have some adult responsibilities and something to work for because the free ride, just like Universe 25 with the mice, isn't going to end with one of my kids becoming a wretch or one of my kids becoming a beautiful mice. You're going to have to work for something, right? When the soft gloves, the cotton gloves don't work, Someone's got to come in and lay down the law, and that's where we're at right now. Heaven forbid women be the one who come in and lay down the law. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want women to do that. Yeah, we'll save that topic for another day. Okay. So another thing that's happening too is third world migrants are committing fraud, are now being deported. This is happening in mass, which is pretty great. I was in prison with a guy that was serving time for PPE loan fraud. And apparently a lot of migrants committed loan fraud as well. And we're starting to see them exit the system. I really wonder how much money Trump is saving by cutting off all these programs. He's raising money by tariffs. He's getting rid of, open circuits for the money, so to speak, these black holes like the Department of Transportation, EPA that money was going to, but then simultaneously he's raising revenue with the tax code by increasing productivity. We could be in for some really interesting economic
CBS
times.
News Miami's Tanya Francois spoke to the couple about what they are going to do next.
Idris Michelin moved to South Florida when he was just 3 years old. Now at 32, he's back in Haiti with his American wife. He says he committed a crime and now he's living the consequences.
I still don't feel like I'm home. I still feel like I'm just roaming. I feel uneasy.
For the past few weeks, Idris Michelin and his wife Yamil have been walking the streets of Haiti, trying to mentally accept that this is now home.
I lived in the country 30 years. I never got in trouble, but I made a mistake. My morals became corrupted.
Idris was deported after serving 25 months in federal prison and 9 months in ICE custody. He was convicted of getting an illegal PPP loan back in the summer of 2020. He was living in the United States as a permanent resident, graduated from Southridge High School, and went on to Miami-Dade College. He was a licensed realtor and insurance broker. After serving his sentence earlier this month, Michelin was deported to Haiti on a flight with 120 people.
Your ankles are getting cut up. Your hands are shackled together. They're telling you, hey, if there's a plane crash, you're going to grab this from here and you're going to put this on your face. How?
He says once in Cap Haitian, they were given $100 and released to family. His wife was waiting.
There's people that left only 2-3 years ago that are afraid to come here, and she's here.
The Temporary Protective Status, or TPS, for more than 330,000 Haitians will end on February 3rd of next year. Without any other immigration protections, some may find themselves, like Idris, back in Haiti.
It's very limited here. So if you're going to be dropping tens of thousands of people in one location, and these people live all over the country, but they're not going to be able to get home. There's bandits blocking the road in certain areas.
The two took a helicopter and a bus to get to Petit Guave, where Idris has family. He says they have resources others may not.
And now that I'm here, to my country where my flag is, the people are wonderful. The people work hard, but they're trying to overcome obstacles, and I'm here trying to overcome obstacles as well.
Settling down is the next step. Admittedly, the couple says they don't know how.
I speak a little bit of Creole, and I'm struggling.
The couple have a combined 8 kids who Idris hasn't seen in years. They want to reunite in a third country, except there are very few countries that are allowing visas to Haitians. So the couple remain in limbo.
What I really struggle with that is they've got 8 kids. Another one of these situations. Why? If you ever watched the movie Idiocracy, there you go. The criminal's the guy with 8 kids, but the guy with 9 PhDs has no kids and is sterile because of all the radiation from computers. You know what I mean? It's like, and, thinking they could plan their families. Go watch the beginning of Idiocracy, and there you go. So I feel bad for these people. I've seen literally dozens, maybe even 100 TikToks and other videos that come across my feed of, people who've been deported that are now in these other countries. And they're like, I used to make 10,000. There was one person was a nurse assistant or something like that. Illegal immigrant, of course. How they got to that position was a really good job taken away from an American. And they're back in like Honduras. And they're like, I can't even make like $20 a day working labor. I was like a medical assistant in America. And it's like, yeah, but you weren't supposed to be here. You committed a crime, right? Even if you came here when you were 3 years old, if you commit PPE loan fraud, you're going to be deported. I was in prison with a guy. He was from Kansas. No, he's from the St. Louis area. He's from the St. Louis area. He was a Hispanic guy, looked totally white, spoke absolutely perfect English. I talked to him. He came here when he was 4 with his mother from Tijuana. They ended up in St. Louis, and he went to elementary school. He got a driver's license. He even started a semester in college, but he joined a gang, because why not? Joined a gang, all kinds of crime. He'd been in prison, come out. They let him back out. He got in prison this time. Now he has a deportation order. They're going to deport him back to Tijuana. And he's like, I don't even remember Tijuana. It's like, bro, you should have known that you were here on a guest status. So it's just tragic to see it happening, but of course it's going to happen. Okay. And with that, you got to remember things are changing. What's going on here? Sorry guys, give me just a second. Don't leave. Okay, let's look at this. So one of the things yesterday we talked about gold. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about crypto. Let's be clear. Cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It's here. And it's the latest. And this latest move cements that reality in the biggest way yet. Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's largest crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low DeFi staking rewards and real-time perks like cashback on your spends. To launch America's first CRO treasury when it's done, this new company will be the biggest CRO holder out there. Want in on the action? Head to crypto.com today and grab some CRO. Let's make crypto great again. So go check that out, crypto.com. I am a huge fan of alternative economic systems. I personally live on a silver standard. I have a small amount of Bitcoin, and I love everything outside of the dollar system. I was debanked by the United States financial system because of my involvement in J6. Your relationship with the United States economic system is voluntary. You are choosing to use dollars. Yes, that you have to spend them where they're there, but you don't have to save in dollars. So I do recommend people explore alternatives. And as always, trust your gut. Okay. So it is about time for us to move over into the private. So we are going to do that. Thank you so much for everybody who's been joining us on X and YouTube. We've got a lot of viewers on X. Usually X hasn't always been our biggest, but for whatever reason this week, X is doing very, very well. We'd love for you guys to jump over, hit the Rumble button on X, come into the Rumble, and please, 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 if you would, we would love it if you would follow the show as well as watch on Rumble, make a comment at least once a month. We love that, so we know you're there, and it helps us out. And of course, go to Rumble Premium. Over in Rumble Premium, for those of us that are going to stick around, that's where we have the unoffendables, the people that will not be offended by anything that's said over there, where we can address issues head on, look at some more long format things. And it's really great. Today, we're going to be talking about, in private, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's order to cancel everything Donald Trump signed, including Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice's Judicial Commission, which was required to be signed by his hand and was signed by an Autopen. So, big question. How far is Trump going to take canceling all of Biden's executive orders? Clearly, Biden stood there with Ketanji Brown Jackson and blessed her with his energy and acknowledged that he had appointed her. But did he do that? Did he sign it? And will it be challenged? So we're going to be looking at that in a second. Definitely puts a lot of pressure on the Supreme Court when one of their members might be just ripped off the Supreme Court by the marshals one day or by some military, or it could get a little bit hairy. Might push them to try to resist Trump. It might also make them buckle. Remember, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was passing New Deal legislation, it was being challenged in the courts. And he threatened to pack the court in order to change the constitution of the court in order to get his New Deal stuff approved. And a literal negotiated bargain was struck where they allowed certain of the New Deal, the more important New Deal things, to go through, even though many people have looked at it and said those are unconstitutional. And some were even later found to be unconstitutional, in order to keep the Supreme Court at 9 justices. So I could see Donald Trump basically doing like a little pressure campaign. Same thing. Oh, you want to keep Ketanji Brown Jackson, keep the integrity of the Supreme Court? Be careful how you rule. Make sure it's lawful. Make sure it makes sense to me, Donald Trump. Okay. So we'll be jumping over into the private, and we'll love to have those of you that stick around join us. See you in just a moment.